Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take these huge, often really complicated stories and sort of break them down so you walk away really understanding what's going on. And
Hmm.
today, our mission is, well, it's a big one. We're diving into the, let's say, 4-decade career of Courtney Michelle Harrison.
Hmm.
Singer, songwriter, guitarist, actress. She's done a lot. And the core thing we need to unpack, the reason we've got like stacks of sources here from music mags to court documents, is this incredible duality. How does one person become this absolute icon of female-fronted alt-rock? Enemy called her one of the most influential from the 90s to 2020, while at the same time navigating just immense public turmoil. We're talking personal stuff, legal battles, addiction. It's constant. Platinum albums, Golden Globe nods, but always this shadow.
That duality, that tension, it's exactly what makes her so fascinating and honestly so difficult to pin down. You really can't just look at the music or the acting in isolation. To really get it, you have to juggle like 5 different threads at once. There's the chaotic childhood, which was seriously itinerant, her jump into the whole punk scene, then obviously the massive shadow of Kurt Cobain, and then the acting career, which was surprisingly successful, critically speaking.
Yeah.
And woven through all of that, the constant cycle of addiction, legal troubles, it all feeds into the public image and, into the art itself. She often turned it into material.
Right, it's less a straight biography and more like a study in how you can weaponize chaos, almost turn it into cultural impact. Okay, let's unpack that history, starting right at the beginning, because those seeds were definitely planted early. Hashtag tag tag 2. The formative, unconventional years. 1964, 1987. So Courtney Michelle Harrison, born San Francisco, 1964. And her family background, it immediately puts her right into that 60s counterculture world. Her mom, Linda Carroll, a psychotherapist. Her dad, Hank Harrison, a publisher, but also famously road manager for the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, it connects her directly to the heart of that whole scene. I mean, seriously, counterculture royalty is not an exaggeration.
Wow.
Phil Lesh from The Dead, her godfather. And then her mom's side connects her to the novelist Paula Fox, another figure with this really complex, artistic kind of public family history. So it's this deep well of creativity, eccentricity, maybe instability too.
But that creative environment turns sour pretty fast. Parents divorced in 70, and the custody stuff, wow. It wasn't just messy, it was deeply disturbing based on the records. We're talking serious allegations documented in court. Her mom and one of her dad's girlfriends testified that Hank had allegedly dosed Courtney with LSD as a toddler.
Which Hank absolutely denied, vehemently. Yeah. But based on everything else, he lost custody. I mean, that level of alleged early trauma right there in court documents, it just sets a grim tone for her childhood.
Yeah. So her mom takes her to Oregon, Marcola, and Courtney later described it as this gender-free household surrounded by, in her words, hairy, wangly-ass hippies doing Gestalt therapy.
Right. This kind of intense experimental environment.
So for people listening, what does Gestalt therapy actually mean in that kind of hippie commune setting?
Well, broadly, Gestalt is very focused on the present moment, on individual awareness, taking responsibility for your feelings, integrating parts of yourself. It could be quite confrontational. Raising a kid where maybe every interaction feels like a therapy session. It's intense. It probably pushes you to be independent fast, but maybe you don't develop, normal emotional boundaries. It sounds pretty unstable.
And alongside that home life, she had her own struggles. Attended a Montessori school, but wasn't thriving academically or socially. And there's this really interesting detail from back then. She started observational therapy around age 3, apparently. And at 9, a psychologist noted potential signs of autism, specifically mentioning tactile defensiveness, like a real sensitivity to touch.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Because it's such a contrast to the later persona. She mentioned it herself, saying something like, at an early age, I wouldn't speak. Then I simply bloomed. But that sensitivity, that withdrawal, it clashes so hard with the later image, right? The stage diving, the fighting, the revealing clothes. It makes you wonder if that whole rock star thing was partly a massive reaction against that early sensitivity, a kind of armor. Hashtag be rebellion in early independence.
Okay, so that blooming she mentioned, it definitely leaned towards rebellion. Age 14, back in Portland, she gets caught shoplifting, ends up in Hillcrest Correctional Facility, basically juvenile hall.
Right. And ironically, juvie becomes this weird kind of cultural education for it. She discovers punk rock that changes everything. Patti Smith, the Runaways, the Pretenders. So the confinement doesn't crush her. It actually focuses her anger and gives her this soundtrack for it.
She definitely wasn't going down the path her mom maybe wanted. By 1980, she gets legally emancipated.
Which wasn't amicable. It led to a permanent break with her mother, and then starts this absolutely wild globe-trotting phase working random jobs funded by a small trust fund from her grandparents.
And the jobs themselves show that duality again. Brief stint as a topless dancer in Japan gets deported for passport issues. Back in Portland, strips at Mary's Club. That's where she takes the name Love, right, to hide from family.
Yeah, adopted Love's there, just kept it.
Fun.
It's raw survival work. But then she's also DJing at a gay disco, saying she learned confidence from the drag queens there.
And then, this is just peak Courtney Love paradox. 1981, she uses that trust fund money to go to Dublin, Trinity College, auditing theology courses for 2 semesters.
It's incredible, isn't it? The highbrow intellectual curiosity funded by, stripping, that constant pull between the sacred and the profane, maybe. And that time in Europe was crucial for her music ambition. She ends up in Liverpool, hanging out with people like Julian Cope from The Teardrop Explodes. He called her the adolescent in his book. And Pete DeFreitas from Echo and the Bunnymen apparently kind of took me in, mentored her. She literally called that whole period a great school to become a rock star. She came back to the U.S. in '82, knowing exactly what she wanted to do. ###C. First steps in music and film.
Okay, so ambition's locked in. But the first attempts at music stardom were, well, a bit rough. She fronted Faith No More for a bit in SF.
Briefly, yeah. They recorded stuff with her, but then fired her. Keyboardist Roddy Bottum apparently said they needed more of a male energy.
Ouch, that must have stung. Especially given what she'd later championed.
Probably fueled the fire, right? To create something undeniably female-powered. So she keeps trying these short-lived bands, often with Cap Jelland, Sugar Baby Doll, Pagan Babies. But here's the key thing. At this point, Courtney wasn't really playing guitar. She was writing the musical ideas, the noise, the chords, and transcribing them for Cat to play. The vision was there, just not the technical skill yet.
Interesting. So when music wasn't quite clicking, she pivots, studies film at the San Francisco Art Institute, takes acting classes with Whoopi Goldberg.
And it works. Gets roles pretty quickly. Alex Cox's Sid and Nancy in '86, then a lead-in Straight to Hell in '87. She starts getting attention. Even Andy Warhol featured her on his TV show. She was right there, on the edge of that sort of celebutante fame.
But she hated it, apparently.
Despised it. According to sources, it wasn't the kind of real, lasting fame she wanted. So she makes this really strategic move, abruptly quits acting in '88, rejects the easy path. And where does she go? Anchorage, Alaska. Works in a strip club for 3 months. Why? To gather her thoughts, she said. To learn how to work. It was a total reset. Building the rock identity from scratch, funded her way, not Hollywood's. #3. The formation of Hole in the grunge scene, 1988-1991.
Right. That Alaska reset seems to lead directly into forming Hole. And this wasn't just jamming in a garage, was it? This felt planned.
Oh, highly calculated.
Right.
Late '88, she teaches herself guitar, moves to L.A., puts out that now legendary ad in a music paper. You know the one.
I want to start a band. My influences are Big Black, Sonic Youth, and Fleetwood Mac, which is just a perfect mission statement for what Hole became, right? The noise and the melody.
Exactly. The abrasive, challenging, no-wave stuff mixed with that classic pop structure and vulnerability. By '89, she finds guitarist Eric Erlandson. And even the band name, Hole. It's layered. It comes from a line in Euripides' Medea, "There's a hole that pierces right through me." But also supposedly from a really blunt conversation with her mom, who told her she couldn't live with a hole running through her.
Wow, so literary tragedy meets raw family trauma. That's very Courtney Love.
It really is. The highbrow and the visceral wound combined. And again, how's she funding this? Still stripping in Hollywood, places like Jumbo's Clown Room, saving up for amps, a van. It's incredibly raw, that bootstrapping approach. Using your body to pay for her art. #B. The debut album and sound.
Okay, so the band forms. First single, Retard Girl, in 1990, already pushing buttons. But the debut album, Pretty on the Inside, 1991,
Right.
That's where the sound really lands.
Oh, yeah. It was intentionally abrasive. Super dissonant, pulling from no-wave, noise rock, even grindcore. Critics heard it as just totally uninhibited, almost scary sometimes. The lyrics were graphic, disturbing, tackling things like body image, sex work, violation, just raw, unfiltered stuff.
And getting Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth to produce it, that was huge for indie cred, right?
Massive. Apparently, Love wrote Gordon this really intense personal letter, basically begging her to do it. And Gordon heard the energy, agreed. That cosign from someone like Kim Gordon meant everything in that scene. And it paid off critically. Pretty on the Inside got great reviews in the indie press. Spin put it on their best albums list. And actually, it's surprisingly well commercially in the UK. Hit number 59 on the main charts. And Teenage Whore went to #1 on the UK indie chart.
But even with that obvious feminist edge, she actively rejected the Riot Girl label, didn't she?
Explicitly, aggressively even. She didn't want Hole lumped in with that movement.
Why not? What was the distinction for her, do you think, between what Hole was doing and what Riot Girl represented?
It seems to boil down to approach, maybe. Riot Girl often felt more about community, collective action, zines, staying outside the mainstream system. Individualistic. She wanted mainstream attention, fame, money, partly to fuel the art, partly maybe just because she wanted it. Her feminism felt more corrosive, cynical, embracing the spectacle, the ugliness, rather than trying to build something separate from it.
Right. Working within the beast versus trying to build something outside it.
Yeah, something like that. A philosophical split, maybe, about how you achieve power and change things. Can you subvert from the inside by becoming this massive, messy spectacle? Or do you need a whole new system? #IV, marriage, media scrutiny, and breakthrough, 1992, 1995.
Okay, so Hole is making noise, getting noticed, and then her personal life just collides massively with the biggest thing happening in music, Nirvana. This period, 92 to 95, it's just relentless public focus.
It's insane. The marriage to Kurt Cobain in 92 on Waikiki Beach. Instant high profile, especially after Nevermind just exploded everywhere. They weren't just a couple. They were crowned alternative rocks, king and queen. And that immediately created this huge identity crisis for her, this privacy nightmare. She said later, marrying him basically created this negative myth around her she couldn't control. Made her look like, what did she say? Made Yoko Ono look like Pollyanna. Vilified.
And the absolute flashpoint for that vilification has to be the Vanity Fair article, Strange Love, September 92.
Yeah.
Right at Nirvana's peak. It painted this really dark picture, alleging she used heroin while pregnant.
Yeah, that was the bombshell allegation, which the sources show Love strongly denied. Said she stopped immediately when she found out she was pregnant. But the fallout was immediate and brutal. Children's services got involved, investigated. They temporarily lost custody of Frances Bean. That one article had real-world legal consequences, high stakes.
It feels like that piece just cemented a public narrative about her, maybe more than any song or movie had up to that point. Is that fair?
I think absolutely. It wasn't just a bad profile. It felt like an indictment. It framed her for years as the unstable addict, the destructive influence. Love herself believed it damaged Cobain's mental state profoundly, hurt their marriage, maybe even contributed to his suicide later. The narrative was set. She was the agent of chaos. #####B, critical acclaim and tragedy.
And then the tragedy hits. Cobain dies in April 94 while she's actually in rehab in LA. And in this just horrific timing, Hole's second album, Live Through This, comes out 1 week later.
The timing is just unbearable, isn't it? It instantly layered this profound, unwanted meaning onto every single lyric about beauty, anger, survival, betrayal. Critics, fans, nobody could separate the art from the life event. And then just 2 months later, June 94, bassist Kristen Pfaff dies of a heroin overdose. So Love has to find a replacement, Melissa Aftermore, immediately to go on this huge world tour promoting an album about surviving pain while literally living through this unimaginable cycle of death and addiction.
It's staggering. Yet somehow the album becomes this huge success. Critically adored, commercially massive, platinum by April 95. How did critics even process the music itself under those circumstances?
They hailed it as a masterpiece, basically. Recognized its incredible mix of just raw, screaming rage. The noise was still there, but fused with this deep, poetic, incredibly raw vulnerability. Rolling Stone's description of her vocals as a corrosive, lunatic wail really stuck. It felt like art ripped directly from trauma. And that perception, sadly, maybe propelled her even further into the mainstream. Ended up on Barbara Walters' 10 Most Fascinating People in 95. ####C. The Chaotic Live Persona, 1994-1995.
This era also cements that absolutely wild, unpredictable stage persona. This is when the chaos wasn't just in the lyrics, it was right there, physically, on stage.
Oh, the live shows were legendary and genuinely chaotic, sometimes frightening. Love was completely uninhibited, stage diving constantly, flashing the audience, getting into actual fights with people in the crowd. It was pure spectacle, turning internal pain outward, maybe.
And it spilled off stage, too. There were actual arrests, serious incidents during that tour. Melbourne, January 95, arrested for disrupting a Qantas flight.
Right, arguing with a flight attendant. Then the really famous one, Lollapalooza, July 95. Punches Kathleen Hanna, gets charged with assault, ends up sentenced to anger management classes.
Looking back, how much of that was performance and how much was just the substance abuse taking over?
It's hard to separate, isn't it? Love herself said later she barely remembers 94-95. Talked about using huge amounts of heroin and Rohypnol. So yeah, it was definitely fueled by heavy drug use. It was this period of peak creativity happening alongside total personal disintegration, all playing out under this intense media spotlight that framed it as just her being notorious. #tag John Nero V. Mainstream success, acting, and rehabilitation, 1996 to 2012.
Okay, so after that absolutely brutal live through this cycle, she pulls off another one of her big pivots, just like ditching the celebutante thing earlier.
Right.
This time, it's a serious return to acting. Leads this period of like image rehab, real artistic success, before inevitably another crash and then a real push towards sobriety. #tag day. Return to film a new persona, 1996-1999.
That return to acting in 96 was huge. She gets cast as Althea Leisure in Miller Forman's The People vs. Larry Flynt. And Forman was strict. He demanded she get clean and stay clean for the shoot. She did it, passed multiple drug tests, and that enforced sobriety seemed to unlock this incredible performance.
And the validation was immediate. Golden Globe nomination, won the New York Film Critics Circle Award for Best Supporting Actress. Roger Ebert, who wasn't easy to impress, called her a true actress, not just a rock star playing pretend. That's major critical respect.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that success fueled this whole image makeover. She consciously shifts away from the kinder whore look, the ripped dresses, the smeared makeup, starts appearing much more polished, decorous, as one source put it, doing high fashion campaigns for Versace, features in Vogue Italia, actively trying to cultivate respectability, control that narrative that had painted her as just pure chaos.
And this lines up with Hole's third album, Celebrity Skin, in 98, which is this massive musical shift, right? Totally different from the earlier stuff.
Complete reinvention. Ditches the raw noise for this super polished, radio-friendly power pop sound. Famously co-wrote a bunch of the songs with Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins.
Right, you can really hear his influence on the production, that kind of layered, slick sound.
Definitely. It brought this huge level of studio polish, big hooks, compression, sacrificing that raw edge of pretty on the inside, but it worked commercially. Celebrity Skin went multi-platinum, got 3 Grammy nominations, gave them the first #1 modern rock hit with the title track.
But even while embracing that mainstream sound, she still had her own unique touches, like collaborating with Fender on that Squier Vista Venus guitar, which was like a budget model, right?
Yeah, it was a lower-priced Squier model. And that was intentional. She wanted it simple, affordable, accessible. Said she wanted a sound that was really warm and pop, but could still go dirty easily with basic pedals. It kind of reflects that duality again, doesn't it? Clean pop potential, but the ability to unleash noise instantly. It was also a rejection of those super complex guitar rigs lots of male rock stars had. Keep it simple, functional. #tag Legal and Personal Downfall, 2001-2005.
So she achieves this mainstream success, this critical acting acclaim, but then after 2000, things unravel again, big time. Mostly around the Nirvana legacy, right?
Yeah. The legal battles really kick off in 2001. Loves to dissolve Nirvana LLC. That's the company she formed with Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic to manage the band's legacy. Her lawsuit basically blocked everything, including a planned box set that was ready to go.
That must have been incredibly bitter.
Oh, it was brutal. Years of litigation. Grohl and Novoselic fired back, calling her irrational, mercurial, self-centered, saying she made the LLC impossible to run. Lowe's position was basically, Kurt Cobain was Nirvana, and she and Francis were the rightful heirs, demanding more control over how the music was used, valued, released.
So it's this very public fight over art, money, legacy.
Yeah.
And it completely redefined her relationship with Grohl and Novoselic in the public eye. Puts her back in that volatile litigant box.
Exactly. And happening alongside all this, her substance abuse problems come roaring back.
Yeah, the timeline gets messy again. 2003, arrested at Heathrow, banned from Virgin Atlantic. Later that year, arrested in LA, breaking windows at her producer boyfriend's place, charged with being under the influence.
And that instability had direct consequences again. Temporarily lost custody of Frances Bean. Again.
And the music from this time, her solo debut, America's Sweetheart, in 2004, didn't land well, did it?
Critically panned, sold terribly, under 100,000 copies. Love herself later disowned it, basically. Blamed her drug problems, said something like, I cannot exist as a solo artist, it's a joke. Just brutal self-assessment.
And the public appearances. Oh boy. The Letterman incident in March 2004, flashing him, standing on the desk, that became instantly infamous.
Yeah. And then, like hours later, arrested again in New York for allegedly hitting a fan with a mic stand at a club show. She later pleaded that down to disorderly conduct. It just felt like this spiral of very public self-destruction, almost deliberately undermining the mainstream success she'd just achieved.
How did she finally pull out of that nosedive?
It took the Kurt stepping in, really. In 2005, facing jail time, she was ordered into mandatory lockdown rehab, then had to do another 180 days in a program after that. She talked openly about addictions to prescription meds, cocaine, crack. Sources say she finally achieved a more stable period of sobriety around 2007, and she credited her Buddhist practice, Soka Gakkai, which she'd actually started way back in '88.
Soka Gakkai Buddhism. How did that specifically help, do you think?
Well, Soka Gakkai focuses a lot on chanting Namahyo Renshikyo and this idea of human revolution, basically transforming yourself from within to overcome challenges, changing poison into medicine, as they say. For someone battling such intense, self-destructive patterns, maybe that focus on internal discipline, personal responsibility, and transformation offered a framework that court orders alone couldn't provide. It seemed to stick better this time. #tag show revival in art, 2009-2012.
Okay, so emerging from rehab, trying to rebuild, but the legal dramas followed her online, didn't they? The Twitter libel suits, that was pretty new territory back then.
Totally pioneering, yeah.
Yeah.
She got hit with 2 major libel lawsuits over things she posted on Twitter, ended up settling one for like $450,000 and ordered to pay $350,000 in another. Became one of the first big test cases for social media defamation. Chaos follows her everywhere, even digitally.
Musically, she tries to bring Hole back. Nobody's Daughter comes out in 2010. But there was drama around that too, right, with Eric Erlandson?
Yeah, Erlandson publicly disputed it being called a Hole album, argued it was really a solo record contractually, but it came out under the Hole name anyway. And the album itself really reflects that recovery period. A lot of the material was written during those rough years, 2003 to 2007, and in rehab.
The sound changed again, too.
Yeah, shifted more towards folk rock, lots of acoustic guitar, still polished, though, lyrically, very focused on sobriety, struggles, reconciliation. Critics noted how her voice had changed, become really raspy and weathered. Some compared it to Dylan, actually, capturing that pain and maturity.
And around the same time, she branches out again creatively, starts showing visual art.
Right. 2012, she debuts this collection called And She's Not Even Pretty in New York. Drawings, paintings. It's just another example of her needing to process everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and turn it into something tangible, something creative, whether it's music or art. It's how she controls the narrative, maybe. #tag rule my head. Current status, artistry, and enduring legacy.
So, looking at the last decade or so, 2013 onward, it seems like maybe a period of relative stability. Continued work, but maybe less relentless crisis.
Relatively speaking, yeah. She went back to acting, doing supporting roles on TV shows like Sons of Anarchy, Revenge, had a recurring part on Empire. And her music for Empire, like the track Walk Out on Me, got really good reviews. Critics noted how her voice now, that husky, lived-in sound, perfectly fit the ravaged darkness of the song. Like the life experience added this layer to her art.
And she finally got a win on the legal front with those Twitter cases.
Yeah, in 2014, she actually won the first Twitter libel case that ever went to trial in the U.S. A former lawyer sued her, and the jury sided with the Love landmark case. And she finally finished her memoir, The Girl with the Most Cake, came out in 2022 after being in the works for ages.
And her activism resurfaced in a big way during Me Too, right? With that old Weinstein clip.
Oh, yeah. That 2005 red carpet clip where she warns young actresses, if Harvey Weinstein invites you to a private party, don't go. It went viral in 2017. She later claimed she got eternally banned by her agency, CAA, for saying things like that back then. Shows there was maybe real professional risk to her being outspoken, not just self-inflicted drama.
And the sobriety journey, it's ongoing.
Seems like it. She indicated publicly she'd relapsed with opioids around 2018, but then shortly after celebrated a year of sobriety. So it's clearly still a struggle, but one she seems committed to navigating now.
Okay, let's pull back from the life story for a second and focus just on the art. Her influences were always more complex than just grunge, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. She was incredibly well-read, musically literate, always talked about post-punk and new wave being foundational.
Right. She called Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart the greatest song ever, cited Echo and the Bunnymen as huge influences. You can draw a direct line from that 80s intelligent, atmospheric rock to Hole sound.
And literature was always there. We mentioned Medea. She talked about prioritizing lyrics, wanting them to look good on the page like poetry, referenced T.S. Eliot, Baudelaire, and Sexton. Critics saw her articulating this kind of third-wave feminist consciousness, tackling really tough subjects, body image, sex work, assault, death from this unflinching female viewpoint.
And that famous quote about wanting both a grindcore band and a raspberry-style pop band. That perfectly explains the huge leaps in sound, doesn't it?
It really does. It shows she had the desire and eventually the skill to do both the extreme noise of Pretty on the Inside and the super melodic, polished pop of Celebrity Skin. She wanted to master both ends of the spectrum.
And her voice, instantly recognizable. That husky contralto and then the scream.
That banshee-like scream, yeah, it's iconic.
Yeah.
Got her ranked number 130 on Rolling Stone's 200 Greatest Singers list recently. It's a unique instrument. #Z, legacy and impact.
So when you boil it all down, what's the core legacy? For me, it comes back to that idea of female empowerment through just grabbing an instrument.
Totally. That quote is everything. I want every girl in the world to pick up a guitar and start screaming, I strap on that motherfucking guitar and you cannot fuck with me. That's the message. She created this powerful blueprint.
And it connected. Hole sold millions of records, over 3 million just in the U.S., one of the most successful female-fronted rock bands ever. She genuinely did subvert expectations about how women in rock should look, sound, act.
And the look itself, the Kinderhore aesthetic, the baby doll dresses, smeared makeup, tiaras, that was part of the subversion too. She said it was meant as irony, mocking those ideas of innocence and domesticity, even if the mainstream just saw it as grunge fashion.
And beyond the stage, she's consistently supported causes too, right?
Yeah, longtime support for LGBT causes, working with the LA Gay and Lesbian Center, anti-sexual abuse charities like the Joyful Heart Foundation, and she even took on the music industry itself. Wrote that big piece for Salon back in 2000, arguing about unfair contracts, artists getting ripped off. Then more recently started From Her to Eternity in 2021 to spotlight women's contributions to music history. So that desire for change runs deep. #7 outro.
Wow, okay. What a journey. I mean, from potential autism diagnosis and studying theology to juvie, getting kicked out of Faith No More, becoming an Oscar-nominated actress, the rehab cycles, it's just immense. What really stands out is the sheer volume of stuff she created. The music, the films, the art, right in the middle of all that chaos, maybe even because of it.
It really highlights that contradiction at her core, doesn't it? This incredibly intelligent person, steeped in literature and philosophy, but constantly grappling with these huge, very public, personal demons, addiction, legal fights, outbursts. Her whole career is this wild case study in taking vulnerability, chaos, even self-destruction, and somehow forging it into really successful, complex, undeniable art and achieving this lasting notoriety.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on. We've tracked this turbulent path towards sobriety, towards stability, but so much of our iconic work lived through this. That explosive stage persona came directly from the absolute peak of the chaos, the addiction. So is that kind of artistic breakthrough only really possible when you're blurring the line between creation and self-destruction? Or is the later work, the stuff born from sobriety, like the reflective Nobody's Daughter, the disciplined acting actually the more profound, maybe the harder one, legacy? Something to think about.